thesis procedure, because today she will defend her thesis work in front of you, the public. The experts in the room, they've seen most of the work already, maybe not all of it, but the last step is the scrutiny. So let me first introduce the members. And yes, thank you, Mauro, for recording. Today is the thesis defense of Gabriela Villalobos-Zúñiga. Her thesis is on the quest for the motivation app, designing effective behavior change apps through the lens of the self-determination theory. Let me introduce you first to the jury, and then to the, which is also the thesis committee, and then to the main person here, that's Gabriela. I'd like to start with Mauro Cherubini. He's the director of the thesis and professor at the Faculty of Business and Economics in Lausanne. Second, Kévin Huguenin, professor also at the same faculty, and he's the internal expert. So he's in charge of handling the procedure inside. Then we have in the committee, but to my knowledge, not in the Zoom room, is Professor Rita Orji. She's at the University of Dalhousie in Canada. She's the first external expert. And then Max Birk, he's professor of IT at the Department of Industrial Design at the University of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. He's the second external expert. I'm Rafael Lalive. I'm a vice dean of the Faculty of the Business and Economics, and I'm the president of the Public Defense Thesis Committee. Now, last but by no means least, now comes the most important part of this thesis defense, is Maria Gabriela Villalobos-Zúñiga. She has already acquired 3 degrees. The first one is a bachelor, you're not surprised, but it's a bachelor in computation, in Ingeniería en Computación del Instituto de Tecnología de Costa Rica. I couldn't translate it right away in English. The second one is a master in science of technology at the University of Aalto in Finland. And the third one is a master of science in technology at the Université de Paris Sud 11. Okay, so now we know the thesis committee, the candidate, and of course, welcome to everyone who's here to attend this public defense. You're a very important element of this defense, as you will see. But now I'd like to give the word to Gabriela, and she will tell us what she found during her thesis work. The floor is yours, Gabriela.
Thank you, Rafael. So I'll start sharing my screen. I believe you can see my screen, right?
Perfect.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for joining this defense. And I want to begin this defense by sharing this quote from Steve Jobs. And if this is the only memory you will save out of this talk, then remember this. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. To me, it conveys 2 key elements that every PhD student must keep close to their hearts. First, we researchers should trust ourselves to open new paths. And second, we must follow our intuition and connection with our creative side to produce and expand the knowledge. Don't follow paths, create your own. What's the purpose of life? Without a doubt, I can go ahead and answer that we all want to be happy. And one way in which we as human beings can do this is by following our natural tendency that pushes us towards self-realization. When we reach who we want to be, we also reach higher states of well-being, we find meaning in life and fulfill our greatest potential. And why would it matter to care about well-being? Well, having high well-being indicates that our lives are progressing favorably, we feel satisfied and fulfilled, we experience a decrease in disease, illness, injury, and increment our longevity. Now, the question is, how to achieve higher states of well-being? A promising approach is by focusing on improving our physical activity. This is a great way to go because we can easily find tools, books, and apps that support us in reaching our physical activity objectives. Apps are fantastic because of their own low entry barrier and can support goals in different areas like healthy eating, losing or gaining weight, and practicing some sport. However, we rapidly face a big but. Despite all these promising characteristics and benefits, users of these behavior change apps fail to reach their goals because they lack the motivation to pursue the intended activity. My research lies precisely at the overlap between human motivation and technology. As I mentioned, there are multiple apps available on the markets. For some of these apps, their creators have received inspiration and support from psychological theories like Happify and Fabulous, but also a large majority lacks theoretical support. Now, you might be thinking, is it relevant to design theory-informed behavior change apps? The answer is absolutely. Having a theoretical foundation provides guidance on what behavioral outcomes expect in response to a particular stimuli. This, in consequence, leads to more robust design and more effective apps. In this thesis defense, I will present my quest for the motivation app, designing effective behavior change apps through the lens of the self-determination theory. This presentation is structured in the following sections. First, I will introduce the theoretical foundation of my research, including a literature review. Then I will present an overview of the research streams I explored. After this, I will dive deep into each of the streams. Research stream 1 is entitled Apps That Motivate, a taxonomy of app features. Here I developed a taxonomy that serves as a foundation for the second research stream entitled Informed Choices, Progress Monitoring, and Comparison with Peers. In this research project, I designed a physical activity app grounded on the self-determination theory. In the third research stream, I expand the physical activity app design and tested multiple app feature combinations. This stream is entitled Let's Compete, Will Be Rewarded. And finally, I conclude with a general thesis discussion and conclusions. In my research, I take as a foundation the human motivation theory named self-determination theory, or SDT. This theory differs from other human motivation theories because it does not consider motivation as a unitary concept, meaning that it just varies in amount. For example, having too much or too little motivation. Instead, the SDT states that humans have different types of motivation. We have autonomous motivation and control motivation. Autonomous motivation means we experience willingness, volition, or choice. Control motivation means we perform an activity to obtain a reward or a punishment. And if you are wondering why I'm mentioning this distinction, well, when people are more autonomously motivated, the performance, wellness, and engagement are more significant than when experiencing controlled motivation. Another essential remark concerning autonomous motivation is that SDT distinguishes two types of autonomous motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic is doing an activity because we find it interesting and enjoyable, like reading a cooking book because we enjoy gastronomy. And extrinsic is doing something because it leads to a separable outcome, like studying a gastronomy book to obtain a cooking certificate. Fostering intrinsic motivation is more attractive to reach sustained behavior change because the moving force of an individual to perform an activity originates from the internal self and not from external elements that might not be available all the time. Another relevant aspect of the SDT is that it states that human beings have three basic psychological needs: competence, feeling of being confident and effective at a target activity; relatedness, feeling care for others or to feel cared by others; autonomy, experience in self-endorsement, and ownership of their actions. To give you an example, let's think about a runner who wakes up in the morning to attend a training session. She is deciding to wake up early and train, therefore supporting her need for autonomy. Then she knows that her colleagues are waiting for her. So this makes her develop a sense of belonging, therefore supporting relatedness. And by the end of the session, she feels satisfied because she reached the target of 10 kilometers for this session, therefore supporting competence. When these psychological needs are satisfied, the individual experiences states of high quality motivation, performance, and well-being. Engagement is another relevant concept in my research. It's defined as a category of user experience characterized by attributes of challenge, positive affect, endurability, aesthetic and sensory appeal, attention, feedback, variety, novelty, interactivity, and perceived user control. Engagement follows three phases: point of engagement and re-engagement, initiated by the aesthetic appeal of the interface. Engagement, when the users are able to maintain their attention on interest in the application. And disengagement, users disengage for many reasons, such as the usability of the technology and distraction in their environments. Now that I have introduced the theoretical ground of this thesis, I present to you my general research aim. Determine how we can design behavior change apps to support the basic psychological needs, aiming to promote higher states of well-being and motivation in the context of physical activity. To answer my research aim, I proposed 3 research questions, and for each question, I conducted a study. I relate each question to a research stream. The first research question is, can the self-determination theory suggest characteristics that behavior change apps would need to possess to support behavior change interventions? Do behavior change apps on the market possess these? To answer this question, I analyzed 208 apps from the Apple App Store, identified 12 design features present in these apps, and classified them according to the SDT. I leveraged the taxonomy and designed an SDT-based step tracking app to develop the next research stream. Precisely, the app comprises 3 features, each intentionally designed to support the basic psychological needs. And the research question I formulated was, what are the individual's perceptions about the hypothesized app features that aim to support autonomy, competence, and relatedness when it comes to improving their physical activity? The study showed that the hypothesized app features included in the design contributed empirical evidence that they correctly map to the basic psychological needs. Rounding on the findings from this study, I expanded the design of the app features. I sought to understand how multiple combinations of these features influence the overall behavior of its user. The research question I formulated for the third research stream was, what are the basic psychological needs feature combination that produce the most effective positive effects on the individual's behavior when it comes to improving their physical activity? To answer this question, I designed an experiment testing 7 different feature combinations. I evaluated the participants' intrinsic motivation, engagement, and physical activity level. In the third research stream section, I will present the preliminary results of this project. Now let's look into the research stream 1. The following is the methodology I followed. We conducted a systematic review and analysis on the Apple App Store. This diagram shows the process we followed. We identified apps aiming at supporting users who were willing to change their behavior. We collected the top rated apps, guaranteeing a cross-section of popular apps. And each app was installed on a device and tested for several hours across multiple weeks. Multiple apps were tested in parallel. Then we performed a functional decomposition to extract the app's main features that were relevant for behavior change and coded the app features. Next, we coded the subsystems identified during the functional decomposition process using a procedure adapted from thematic analysis. The analysis process involved 2 stages. First, we grouped the subsystems that provided the same basic functionality. These formed the initial codebook. In the second stage, overarching themes evolve, and these were product patterns under which we organized our behavior change features. For example, the functions that provided mechanisms to remind, taking medication, or performing an exercise formed the theme reminders. We clustered codes where we had evidence from the literature that these were providing support to the behavior change process. Let's see examples of features that provided support to the BPNS of autonomy. Reminders are usually implemented as a message or push notification delivered around the time the user should perform a specific activity. The message delivery times are defined by the user or identified by the app. SDT considers self-organization a natural condition towards which individuals lean and that occurs under autonomy supportive conditions. The goal setting feature provides the user the possibility to input or define the target for the activity they will perform. We identify 3 patterns. First, the user proactively sets up a goal. Second, the app prompts the user directly about what the goals are. And third, self-competition, where the user sets a bid against oneself or against previously obtained result. The goal setting feature supports the need of autonomy because it contributes to an internal perceived locus of causality, or that the behavior is intrinsically motivated. Let's see examples of the features that provide support to the BPNS of competence. This feature provides the user with information about how the task was performed in a given session, and it might also present the user with details on the overall progress towards completing a predefined set of activities. When this feedback is positive, showing growth or improvement trends, it can enhance an individual's sense of competence. History, in this functionality, the users are presented with a representation of their activity over a period of time. History is a simply crude chronological representation of what occurred in the various sessions during which the activity was performed. The information helps the user know themselves and how their personal circumstances might influence the behavior. Their aim to change, hence it supports the basic need of competence. Let's see examples of features that support the basic psychological need of relatedness. Performance sharing. This feature enables the user to share their achievements with their peers through social networks, email, instant messaging, or text messages. Typically, the user shares the score of the recently completed task or challenge. Peers comparison. The functionality is typically implemented with a list of people who are performing the same activity. This list is ordered using quantitative scores and might include usernames, nicknames, user pictures, or avatars. Through a comparison with peers, users can assess the impact of their actions on others and feel more effective. Therefore, this feature supports the basic need of relatedness. Looking at the coverage of the BPNS, we observed that the 2 most popular behavior change features that support the BPN of autonomy are reminders and goal setting. When looking at the competence BPN, we noticed that most popular features is activity feedback. And finally, for relatedness, the most popular feature is performance sharing. Now, let's look at the discussion of these results. First, there are research opportunities suggested by rarely used design features. For example, one of the features that is rarely used is pre-commitments, which is implemented in less than 1% of behavior change apps. Pre-commitment can be a powerful mechanism to counter procrastination because self-imposed deadlines are effective in improving task performance. Another feature is intergroup competition, which occurs when the app enables users to cooperate towards a given goal. Grounding on the results of the previous section, we follow a design through theory approach to create app features that support the basic psychological needs. We use these features to create a step counter app, which we tested and captured participants' impressions of the app features. Our goal was to design a step tracking app with a minimal set of functionalities that support the BPNS as posited by SDT. We started the design process by studying the examples of apps and the characteristics of the features presented in the taxonomy of behavior change apps. We filtered by high coverage of taxonomy features and picked the top 2 of each BPNS. Finally, the selected feature set was goal setting, history, and peers comparison. So we designed a minimalistic step counter app built on the taxonomy. Our app included a weekly goal feature to support autonomy, allowing participants to select their goal, a history to support competence by allowing them to reflect on their past days' performance, and peers comparison feature to support relatedness by allowing participants a functionality to connect and relate to other participants. We conducted a 4-week field study with 49 participants from 18 to 30 years old. We asked them to fill a diary, and then we interviewed 15 of them. We analyzed our data by engaging in an affinity diagram process until we compile a document with the categories or themes and representative quotes from our participants. Results: we analyzed the users' perceptions and found that with respect to autonomy, users had an impression about what the step goal meant to people, like experimenting feelings of being in control of their goal and that they had decision power. We also captured perceptions about the emotional spectrum. People felt interested in the activity. With respect to competence, we captured perceptions of self-evaluation. For example, participants felt they were making progress when looking at the history feature. Also, we captured perceptions of empowerment when they said they felt strong while walking, and hedonic aspects such as feeling bad when they have walked latest steps. With respect to relatedness, we captured perceptions of companionship when participants expressed they were not feeling alone. We gathered perceptions of comparison and competition when we noticed that participants were looking at other steps and comparing themselves. And finally, we collected perceptions of curiosity, for example, when they questioned what other might be doing. Let's look at the discussion of this research stream too. So we noticed that informed and personalized choices supports autonomy. This is that because participants had information about their weekly average step counts, they knew if they feel confident to accept a weekly goal step or not. Also, because the weekly goal suggestion was tailored to their previous week average steps, participants felt more inclined to accept the goal increase. The design for history feature supported competence. The fact that participants could reflect on their past physical activity performance, and when this performance was increasing or aligned with their expectations, they elicited feelings of progress and empowerment. However, when this performance was negative, they experienced feelings of sadness. We also noticed that comparison with peers partially supported relatedness. We observed direct and indirect competition. Direct competition when they compare their step counts with that of other participants, and indirect competition when they perceive their daily step goal as a competition with themselves. However, participants did not perceive themselves connected to other participants. Research stream 3. In this section, I would present a study where we evaluated during 5 months a physical activity app that combines multiple features supporting the basic psychological needs. We assess participants' intrinsic motivation and daily average number of steps. Then we present our preliminary results indicating a positive trend caused by the app supporting competence and relatedness. This research stream is entitled "Let's Compete, We'll Be Rewarded." The goal was to collect objective participants' behavior while using different combinations of the BPNS supporting app features. So we designed an app with 3 features, each supporting one of the BPNS, and tested different app feature combinations. On the previous version of the goal setting feature, participants could see a dialogue indicating a suggestion for a weekly goal. In this suggestion, the step goal was increased by 5% concerning last week's average. From our findings, participants expressed that there were occasions in which incrementing 5% was too much of an effort to them. So to improve this feature, we provide participants with more control over their step goal setting. We offered more choices by allowing the individuals to choose between increasing their weekly step goals by 0%, 5%, or 10%. On the previous version of the competence support feature, participants could observe a two-column table. The first one indicating the total number of steps for a given day, and the second one indicating the date in year, month, day format. From our findings, participants conveyed that there was no weeks indicator on the list, nor a sum of total weekly steps. Therefore, they made step computations to know if they achieved their weekly goal. To improve these features and provide participants with better competence need satisfaction, we replaced the steps history feature with rewards. These were represented in the form of yellow stars that remain on the screen, allowing participants to visualize their progress better and reduce the mental workload. On the previous version of the relatedness support feature, participants could observe a table with two columns, the first indicating participants' pseudonyms and the second column with their daily steps. This list did not have any particular order, and its intention was to foster comparison between participants. They could not see further information from other participants except for the first names. To improve this feature, iteration, and provide participants with a better relatedness need satisfaction, we introduced a weekly competition in which they competed against other participants enrolled in the study. Also, we added a participant information section on the app that when tapping on the participant's pseudonym, the app displayed a screen with their avatar, pseudonym, hobbies, and age. We conducted a between subject factorial design experiment with 243 participants. We randomly distributed them into 7 experimental conditions plus a control condition. We wanted to identify which of these 7 combinations could possibly affect their behavior. We measured the following variables: number of steps, intrinsic motivation, and recency in the app usage, which is our engagement measure. The timeline of the study is composed of 3 phases: the pre-phase, the experimental phase, and the post-phase. In the pre-phase, we collected the 6-month historical step counts plus a month for setup to allow participant time to download the app. The intervention started in April, and after 4 months, we removed the treatment and request participants to keep the app for 1 more month. As I mentioned, recency is the metric we use to measure the engagement. It is how many weeks have passed since the last time they interacted with the app. In this bar chart, we see how the participants were distributed across these categories. I highlight that C, or competence, R, or relatedness, and competence and relatedness were the experimental conditions that kept more participants engaged. Then for the other experimental conditions, we see that more people are starting to disengage or even entirely disengage. As an illustrative example of our findings, here is the historical average weekly step by CR and control group experimental conditions. We observe the pre-phase on the left side, the setup phase marked in gray, and then we have the first 3 months of the experimental phase. What we want to point out is the difference between the step counts of CR compared to control. In particular, we could observe the change in those differences during the experimental phase. In this graph, we clearly notice that during the pre-phase, control and CR were very, very close together. And as soon as the experiment started, they started to separate, increasing these weekly average steps for CR, suggesting a positive effect during the experimental phase for the CR group. Finally, we measured the intrinsic motivation in 2 moments in time. First, at the onset of the study, which we called IMI 1, and then a follow-up one the week after the cutoff, which we called IMI 2. We aim to identify any significant difference in the median values of pre and post treatment of each experimental condition. To do so, we perform a Per-Wilkinson sign rank test. Visually, in this box plot, we show the distribution of the scores differences by experimental condition. We notice that for the experimental condition C and CR, which we see in orange and in blue, the improvement in the IMI score is significantly at 5%. We can see the table with the test results. Let's look at the meaning of these results. One of the key aspects of discussion is the relation between the experimental condition and engagement. The most engaged participants belong to the condition R, followed by C, and then CR. Also, these are the experimental conditions that produce the most positive effects with respect to physical activity and motivation. This is also interesting because none of them included the autonomy feature in their design. Another interesting aspect that distills from our findings is that competence and relatedness was the winning combination. This positive performance can be explained because participants in CR were part of a team and were enrolled in direct and indirect competition. They also receive rewards for winning a competition in the form of a trophy or for achieving their personal goals, in which case they receive a star. So what happened to ACR? We were expecting ACR to have the best performance of all 7 featured combinations. However, the design of the autonomy feature produced detrimental effects on the behavior of participants. And a possible explanation could be that people that receive a step goal directly from the app, because they did not have an autonomy feature, displayed more substantial commitment to reach their goal. On the contrary, people that had the autonomy feature and were allowed to pick their goal did not display such commitment. Now let's look at the general thesis discussion. The first remark is towards autonomy supportive design. Autonomy support by the goal setting feature did not provoke observable changes in the physical activity. And a possible explanation could be that there was a constant exposure to competence and relatedness feature, but not to autonomy feature, which appear on the screen only for a couple of seconds once a week whenever they set the goal. Future autonomy designs include allowing individuals to choose their activity following their goals, like in this start screen, and leveraging motivational messages to show activity value, like in this light screen. Another aspect concerns the combined effect of supporting multiple BPNS. So more support to the BPNS is not always better, as we observed with the ACR condition. So the detrimental effect of one feature might completely overshadow the positive effect of other features. This was clearly observed on the competence and relatedness support versus the full support of ACR. Therefore, our advice for designers is to test features individually and then combine them with other features to reveal possible detrimental effects. An example is that in this screen, we observe a leaderboard that supports relatedness, and also it includes a share feature, which also supports relatedness. Another remark that is that supporting relatedness might require richer interactions. We notice that supporting relatedness alone does not provoke observable changes in terms of physical activity. Interestingly, we observe a difference when relatedness feature is combined with support to competence. So our advice for designers is to explore alternative designs to increase relatedness support that might not require feedback. For example, in this screen, we see that participants have the opportunity to chat with other teammates or to send or receive kudos. Now let's move to the limitations of these theses. First, the sample of apps we analyzed on the first research stream is limited to 3 apps. Then we tested the apps for several hours. Therefore, our analysis does not account for long-term interventions. Results from the second research stream cannot be generalized because the nature of the qualitative study. The research app is limited to one particular implementation of the BPNS supportive features. The step count measurements from the third research stream are limited to the fact that participants need to carry their phones with them. Future directions for research and design. So a future exploration in the areas of education, working environments, and disease prevention. Also, future research could support the exact needs with other app designs. Then we can understand how the different personality types affect the perceptions and support of the BPNS supportive features, and also design for engagement, not only for the BPNS support. Now let's look at to conclude this presentation, I want to summarize the contribution of this thesis, which is threefold. First, it introduces a taxonomy of behavior change apps features that serves as an artifact to evaluate behavior change apps. This tool also guides designers and researchers to analyze various apps features combinations that have not been fully explored. Second, it provides empirical evidence of app features that correctly map the basic psychological needs. Third, this thesis provides empirical evidence on the basic psychological needs app feature combinations that support an increase in intrinsic motivation and physical activity. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. And I leave here the list of publications. So thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. This was really very interesting. Can you perhaps unshare, and then whenever there's a question about a specific part of the thesis, share again and show when you answer a question? That's perfect. So I would like to announce also and welcome very much Rita Orji. She joined the presentation. She had, I understand, a power outage in Canada, and that explains why she just joined a few minutes later. Welcome, Rita. It's very great to have you here. Now, this is a great presentation, Gabriela. I mean, I don't have anything to say to this as a president. I should not voice my opinion, but I think you did a really great job without influencing anyone. I think it's great to hear about motivation now, and how your apps really, how you studied how these apps really get us to do what we sometimes have a hard time doing. What we'll do now is basically we're going to go into the floor, and I'm going to give the floor to everybody who's attending this public defense. So you all who heard what Gabriela said, is there anything you'd like to raise? A question, a comment? It's like with marriages, now's the time to say so, because afterwards it will be too late. So just raise your hand using the Zoom tool, or just raise it like that. And I think I can see you all on the screen. So is there any comment? Okay, Marco has raised his hand. Please go ahead, Marco. Maybe that's not a hand. Marco, I see your hand up. Do you have a comment for Gabriela? No. Okay. All right. So I think
I have a question.
No, you can't.
I can.
Your turn will come. But was it a question that is addressed to the general public? If you have a question,
yeah, okay.
Your turn.
Okay,
will
go
come.
ahead. I'll wait.
Okay, I see. Rita also has. I see a hand up, but Rita, we will take questions from the thesis committee in a second. Anyone from the public, general public? No. Okay. Well, I think that just goes to show what I said. Your talk was extremely clear, Gabriela. But now I'd like to give the word to the members of the thesis committee, and we have a way of doing this that we start by the person that has the largest, geographic distance to come to this Zoom room, which is Rita at this stage. Do you have comments or questions or things that you'd like to discuss with Gabriela, Rita?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Works perfect.
Hi, Gabriela. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here and see your presentation again. Yeah, I missed the beginning. I had a power outage, but thank God it's actually back. So I enjoyed it. I think some of my questions might just be clarifications. The first one is, did you notice some dropouts during your study? And if you notice some dropout, I know you talked about engagement, but I'm wondering about dropout. Did you notice dropout? If not, what features of your application do you think that helped in retaining people? And if yes, how do you think that people can actually design to improve and ensure that people, I mean, you retain participants at the study more?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the question, Rita, and thanks for joining. Yes, I did notice dropouts in my study, and well, pretty much that's why I had this engagement graph showing, where we saw that people, well, as the experiment passed by, then we saw a decrease in the number of people that were participating, and the people that remained were the ones that had C or CR. And this is interesting because, and this is to answer the reason why they might stick to the experiment. And this is because they had this relatedness feature, first of all, so they were able to connect. There was like this novel effect on seeing what other people were doing. And then the other part is they had this competence feature, which was represented by stars. So the fact that they were receiving this feedback constantly made them stick to the study. And I think this would be the potential explanation of why these people remain. And then, for instance, people in just the autonomy supportive condition did not stay in the study.
Okay, that's a very nice answer. Thank you. Do you actually think that apart from the relatedness and competency explanation that you provided, do you think their physical activity kind of behavior prior to joining your group?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. If people, and this is something that I will analyze later with the interviews. You know, this is the preliminary results. But there were in the interviews we noticed that people were interested already in walking, so they behave differently than people that were not interested. So it's different when you give an app or a technological instrument to somebody that they are not previously motivated to do the activity. It behaves differently. It's different to move somebody from being unmotivated to walk from somebody that has already started. The triggers are different. And definitely this is something that I noticed in this study by capturing who was interested and who wasn't. So this is something for future design to consider. To whom are we designing? Are they already motivated to do the activity or not?
Yeah, that's actually interesting because that actually brings me to the stages of behavior change and the different strategies that have been recommended for designing for different people. That might be something also you might want to look at for your future stuff, because I mean, if someone is already at the spring contemplation, there's contemplation and there's preparation. Somebody's already kind of preparing or is already contemplating or changing. It's actually easier to nudge the person into kind of moving ahead with the change, right? Compared to someone who is still ambivalent, they haven't actually thought about it, do not see any problem with their behavior. So that might be a good lens to look at it. And the next one, I think a recent study by one of my students actually shows that, I mean, trying to personalize based on people's stage of change, even just categorizing them into two, more like people in the early and the later stage, and targeting them using different intervention might actually make a big change in their behavior change journey. So that might be a good one to look at in the future. So my second question has to do with your IMI, the slide on IMI where you talked about the percentage change. Can we get that? Is it there? Or if it is not too, if it is too far, we don't necessarily need it. I can just
no. Just let me find it. Here. Do you see it?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You talked in summary. Okay, you talked about MI score is significant at 5%. So okay. What do you mean by just significant at 5%? 5%?
When we look at C, which is in orange, and when we look at CR, what we see here is basically the comparison or the difference between the IMI 1 and IMI 2. So when we look at the difference, the difference is the one that is significant by 5%. So it means that the measure that they had at the beginning and at the middle of the study, it varied in a significant way for people that were in C and that were in CR. So let's say that their motivation increased in simple form, in simple words, the motivation increased for C and CR.
Okay, that, significance at expressing significance using percentage is not actually common, basically. So I am wondering, does this 5% mean less than 0.5 or?
It's the confidence interval. Yeah.
Okay, confidence interval. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you check the, when you say significant, I'm also assuming that the p-value is also significant, right? Is that what we mean?
Right. There are the p-values there, maybe they're too small.
Okay, thank you. So my probably last question here would be, you can remove the slide, thank you.
Okay.
So that we can have a better view. So my other question would be, when you talked about how to design to improve different categories of IMI, for example, designing for people to really improve their competence or stuff like that, autonomy and stuff like that. What you did basically is following the goal setting route, right? Where you allow people to probably choose their own goal and provide them some things to actually increase their competence and stuff like that, which I really think is nice. I liked it. But one of the things I also thought is that what are the other possible ways, in your opinion, or based on existing research, that people can design to improve those components? For example, if I want to improve autonomy, are there possible other ways that is not, or competence, are there possible other ways that could have been used other than through the goal setting route? Either based on research or based on what you've learned over the years working on this.
Okay, so if I got the question correctly, is other ways of implementing autonomy supportive features,
Yes.
for instance?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, for instance, what we want to achieve with autonomy is that people are able to do the action because they want to. So as you mentioned, and as we saw, selecting a goal could be a potential way to do it. But one other way is by allowing people to set the activities that they really want to do. So allowing them to choose the activities that they want to do when they want to do it, so that they are free to manage their schedules and the time whenever they want to do the activity. So let's say I want to run at 10 a.m. every Monday, and they are able to set that up. So it's not necessarily just like accepting what I'm suggesting, like, do you want to increase 5, 10? Yes or no, but let's bring more autonomous choices, if I can say that, to the people, so that they're able to pick the activity that they want to do and when they want to do it. For instance, that could be another example. Okay,
awesome. So I know you talked about a couple of future research that stems from your study. I'm wondering, if you were to take one of them, what do you think is the immediate one that actually would be like something that is more like an extension of what you've done that will have an impact?
If I take another feature from what I have identified?
No, even future studies, some of future direction of this study. I mean, you talked about a number of them, but then out of all those ones you mentioned, if you are to take one that would have an immediate impact, understand what you've done already, what would that be?
I would definitely go with testing other implementations or other embodiments of the features. So, because what I just did is very limited to the specific design that I followed. So it would be very good to test other combinations and not even supporting, let's say, in one way, autonomy, one for competence and one for relatedness, but let's see if we can have 2 times competence or 2 features that actually support competence and relatedness, something like that. That's what I would push forward the research.
Okay. In other words, you're saying that this is where we anticipate that future research in this area is going to, right?
Right. Yeah. If somebody takes it. Yeah.
Okay. That's really cool. I actually think so that those implementation differences and combination of features, their impact and motivation is actually a timely one and very important. So you're right. So let me just ask one broad question, and that will be it for me. So in all this research, what did you learn, and what would you have done differently if you were to redo it?
What would I have done differently?
Yeah, if you were to redo everything all over again.
I would try not to do longitudinal studies. I will try to find a way to make them shorter, and probably do this like crowdsourcing or trying to get information from more people on the world. Let's say not limited to the population of students, but put the app on the store and let everybody that wants to download it and use it. So like broaden up a little bit the population. But yeah, I would definitely go with the longitudinal studies, try to avoid them or try to make the most out of them whenever you do them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriela. And thank you, Chair. That will be it for me.
Thank you, Rita. Let's have questions. So let's move to the second external expert, Max. Floor is yours. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Rafael. And thank you, Gabriela. I very much enjoyed your presentation and reading about your investigation of self-determination theory in relation to design and the three constructs of self-determination theory: autonomy, relatedness, and competence. You paint a very clear picture of fitting theory to design and allow to investigate the expression of theory in praxis and on experience and behavior. And you also present a sensitive, well-motivated, and insightful work, which is actually like a really challenging endeavor that you mastered quite exceptionally. And I'm not surprised to see you running a workshop at CHI 2022 with one of the inventors of the underlying theory itself. So congratulations to a really great achievement, like in such a short amount of time. So really, really well done. But we would not be in research if there wouldn't be always more questions to be asked. So even more maybe on this intersection between technology, experience, and behavior. And maybe to start us off, like I'm interested like in following up on like one of Rita's questions as well. So we know from theory, right, that when we are creating a socio-contextual environment that provides competence, autonomy, and relatedness, that people are engaging more, right? So it's like if we create these environments, people are going to engage more. So if we don't find this in design, so I'm creating an application as you did, and you tested those aspects, and we find that it doesn't like that, it does not translate into behavior like the design that we intended. Is then the theory wrong, or is there other issues with the design that we need to improve?
Oh, this regarding the context?
Yes, it's regarding like the application features, right? So I created like I know the theory has shown that these like three aspects are coming together, or when they are coming together, they facilitate like behavioral engagement. So if they're not present, and I find like issues there, like I find that behavior doesn't change like through the application design, I'm wondering, does it reflect on the theory? Is the theory wrong, or are there issues with our design that we need to address?
Interesting question, Max. So no, I would say definitely the theory is not wrong. I mean, there are so many variables whenever we translate. I mean, the bias of the designer doing that's there. And something that has been very much discussed in this thesis was the embodiments of the app features. So there are so many ways we can actually do a reminder. There's so many ways we can do a design a leaderboard. It could have avatars or pseudonyms or my real name. It could be ordered, it cannot be ordered. I mean, so many things, so many factors that can affect the result, the behavioral result. And this is just in terms of design. So we can also consider personality types, or we can also consider status of change, as Rita mentioned. So definitely, I would never say that the theory is wrong. I would say that there's so much space to explore ahead in terms of all these different combinations that we can have. And I would say it's like a very, very broad field to go and explore, definitely. And then also keep in mind that this always technocentric approach we have, that maybe we think that just with an app or with a technology tool, then people can change their behavior. Let's not be so like blind or try to see just straight ahead. I mean, people live in different contexts and people have different situations. They could have like divorce or deaths or families and so on, COVID, you know, many things that would affect the behavior. So in the end, it's a very, very complex field. There are many things to explore ahead, and yeah, I would say that again, to answer, no, it's not the theory. It's just that there's so many variables we cannot conclude.
That's a wonderful answer, and I very much appreciate like your description here, like of the complexity of like the interaction like between, right, like our individual differences, technology design, and like the outcome of experience. So if I take that complexity and, you know, like, let's say I would be a chemist and I would like need to develop new compounds, right? Like, and be really serious about like this investigation of how those different like aspects kind of like intersect and like kind of like right build predictors of how we can shape and change behavior. Do you think the field right now is rigorous enough? Like, are we rigorous enough in like how we investigate individual differences and motivation and how they come together in design features?
No, I don't think it's rigorous enough. I think there needs to be maybe like evaluation frameworks put in place so that we can standardize a little bit the way we measure the behavior, because behavior is again, it's very complex, but we can give a little bit of structure on how we measure it and how we know that it actually had an effect or not. Because for instance, like in what I did, to me, saying something went good or bad is just by the number of steps. So that's how I tried to be objective. But again, this is just what I did, what I came up with in my research. But of course, if we can come up with something more rigorous, that would be that would be fantastic for future research.
I love your answer, right? Because like, why as scientists, like, would we shy away from complexity and from defining like these interactions? And I think like the type of work that you present here is like so important for like making this type of progress to kind of like investigate even like the interactions and intersection like of different kind of like design features. So thank you for your answer here. And I think this comes like feeds nicely actually like into my next question, which comes out of your presentation in parts, right? So you start out with here like of like, don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And I'm interested in Gabriela's inner voice, right? So this goes to like, what did you learn like during your PhD, and where did you learn how to listen to yourself, like as a scientist and researcher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to convey with the quote, and especially for all the PhD students that are in this room. And to me, whenever we embark into this research journey, there are so many things, if not everything, that we don't know. We are at the border of getting to explore new knowledge and getting to define the new knowledge. So we live in a world of uncertainty, and that's what we need to manage. And whenever we are in this world, something that can really, really help us move forward is to listen to our intuition and to our hearts. And that's what I wanted to convey with the quote. So that's the research spirit, like trust yourself and know that that nobody knows. I mean, you're the person that knows more about what you're doing, because we're doing research. And that's one thing. And the other is that because everything that we do is novel, then we do new paths. We create new paths we don't follow. We just create new ways of understanding the world, and that's what we do as researchers.
I think you're very inspirational. I don't think just for PhDs. I think like, you know, in every stage like of a researcher's life, like we are good to be reminded kind of like of this line of thinking you provide there. So thank you very much for that. Looking at your insights like through your thesis, I'm quite interested in this kind of like perspective of, you know, and you might find yourself like in this position, you receive a phone call, an email, you know, someone comes your way and says, I'm starting this great company here right now. Gabriela, I need your help. I need insights into how to design my application. And I wonder, like, if you would have advice for me as like an application designer, and maybe it's not like an activity, maybe this is like dietary assessment, like in this case, or dietary like application apps. So a behavioral change like that goes in a little bit of a different direction. What do you have for me to take away?
Yeah, first thing is remember to whom you are designing for. So bring user-centric design to whatever you do. Get to know who you're designing, get to know your users, develop empathy with them. That to me is the first thing.
But yeah. I'm particularly interested like in self-determination related kind of like features, right? So it's like, how do I go about it to like kind of get the most bang for the buck, right? Like, how do I invest? Where do I invest first? Do I go like into designing for relatedness? Do I go into designing for competence, for autonomy, for the intersection of like where should I start?
I would say you should go with the three of them because we need to follow the theory first of all, and then the theory says that we need contexts in which these three needs are satisfied. So I will not go on the contrary of what the theory says. What I would think is that I would try to get a little bit more of knowledge, going back to the answer that I gave at the beginning of user-centric design. So I will try to connect it. So to whom I'm designing for, get to know how we can design these features in a way that they actually touch the values and the needs of these people that I'm designing for, because this would make it more effective. So it's just like, don't open up the taxonomy and pick one or two and then say, okay, let's implement this based on these apps that we already know, but try to let's link them, or I would not say personalized, but something like this, so that these features are not like any random feature that we put together into this app, but that they're aligned to the values and the needs of the people that you're designing for. So if it's elderly, then figure out what are the needs of elderly people and how we can bring ACR to the app.
I like that answer, but there's an aspect here that I find kind of challenging, and that's about like the underlying assumption that as a user, I do want actually like to change, and that the application that's designed is also like used in that particular context, right? So it's like from a, let's say, right, it's like I'm a governmental client, like I want to make sure that my population is healthier, and that's why I'm designing this application, and it's launched like broadly, and I really hope that I'm kind of like nudging people almost like in the right direction, right? And now you're using these kind of set of like very actually influential kind of psychological tools to assure that people are actually like changing at the end, but they might not want to, or it might conflict like with their values. So yeah. How do you reflect on this aspect?
I think here we would need to look into how people adopt technology. And one of my first thoughts is try to make them see value in using the tool. Like how this tool will change the way they're working, how it's going to improve their performance, and how they're going to have more time for other activities that are not work related. So try to make them see value in this new tool that we're presenting to them. And this has to do with adoption, with change management in the company. And that's I would never impose using the tool.
Okay. Do you have thoughts on like kind of the ethical aspects kind of like of doing this type of work, like with right, like with people in different kind of like health related aspects of their life? Are they, I wonder on your reflection on the ethical aspects.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, whenever we do any intervention that uses technology like this, people should be aware that they are being in the intervention, and they should accept that they're being part of a treatment, and that they're free to leave whenever they want, and that they do also know that the consequences of being part of it. to me, everything in general, in everything that relates to behavior, it has to be open and free. So nothing to be pushed or coerced. So to me, that's what brings the best results whenever you're open. Like if you want to be here, be here. And if you don't want, then the door is open. It's fine.
Right. Okay. So maybe this is going to be my last question, but if we take your line of thinking here, and you would have the chance of like sitting in a room like with the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, right? Like what would you kind of like ask them how to adopt and change like their technology that often is more used to kind of, right, force us into like certain behaviors, for example, paying attention like to their application and scrolling down forever. And I'm wondering like what your reflection is coming from a self-determination theory background of like, you know, how we might want to change technology in the future to move away from like forcing attention and providing the option and opportunities to engage differently with applications.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good question that would probably keep me thinking for the rest of the day. But let me see. I would say that through the lens of SDT, one important aspect, again, is bringing this autonomy part so that people know that they're making the choice to use that social media or social network, and that they make the choice, but also that they make an informed choice, so that, for instance, Mark, you can provide info to the people like in very simple form of what it entails to be part of this social media network, like what probably would happen to you, or let's say probably similar, not similar, but common behaviors that will come up if you start participating in this. So it's like give information to the people and give them the choice. And this is something. This is the title of the second paper, which is informed choices. So we found out that people need to be informed whenever they do their choices in order to feel autonomous. And that to me, that would be something that will help from the technology side. But then we have the like politics and stuff like that could also be important. But I think those things are already happening in some countries.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly putting your finger like of one of the largest ways how we can change like society today, right? Like providing transparency and actually providing informed choice, like in technology use, and like driving this like through the lens of like self-determination theory, like really a wonderful effort. Thank you so much for your answers, Gabriela. I'm going to give the word back to Rafael, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max. A very interesting conversation between Gabriela and Max, and also with Rita. The next person I'd like to ask is Kévin. He is an internal expert. The floor is yours, Kévin.
Thanks, Rafael. I'm going to be short. I already asked a lot of questions to Gabriela during the private defense. So I'm going to go back to Max's question, asking essentially, what would you advise the app designer or like, let's say, industrial partners? My question is, what would you advise to end users? So if you had like a recommendation to give to end users on which application to pick on, or how to use this application, or what they should be careful about, and so on, what would you tell them?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kévin. I would say the first thing that comes to my mind is that people should get to know themselves. So get to know a little bit of what triggers them and have a little bit more control on what excites them and how they get attached to technology. And I think this is a very tricky thing to ask people because getting to know ourselves it's a very daunting task. But that's something that I would say at the beginning. And let me see. Another practical thing, I mean, something that would be more practical is set times to use technology. And meaning that if you can, then don't take the phone or the phone to bed when you go to sleep, or just try to put it on the drawer, or try to use more offline mode, airplane mode, something like this. This is like a more practical approach, but to me, something that it's more powerful is to get to know ourselves.
Okay, thanks for the answer. I have a second question. So as you know, I work on data privacy. So one of my question, privacy related question about what you presented is, essentially we know that all these applications collect enormous amounts of personal data, very personal in fact. And I understand that sometimes this data is needed to actually provide good information, good recommendation to users. But there's always this question that we ask ourselves as privacy researchers, which is, do we really need to send this data to the service provider? You know, I mean, could we like provide the same service while keeping all the data on the phone? So my question is, if you look at the data that those applications collect and what they really need to function and so on, could you see like good reasons to actually share this data with the service provider, or could these applications work by just keeping the data on your phone and without sending anything to the service provider or advertisers or whatever? Do you see a good reason for uploading it, having this data leave the phone actually?
With the capacity that we're getting with the phones nowadays, and one of the reasons why I would say that we need to take the data out is because we need more processing capacity or something like that, that it's not in the phone. But given how technology is quickly evolving and how fast the processors are nowadays, I don't see why we should take the data out of the phone. In terms of data processing, that's like the only thing that comes to my mind of a reason why I would take it out.
This argument is not really valid anymore. I would say that the processing that is required on the data is lightweight enough to be performed on the device itself without like incurring too high delays or even battery consumption. I mean, maybe I can give you one example. I mean, you know, like typically for the social component, it might be useful to actually gather all user data in one location so that, you know, for instance, I don't know, like for recommendation, saying like, oh, you know, people who have the same profile as you, you know, they did this and this worked for them, you know. So to be able to provide that kind of advice, you need to actually collect the data of all users in one location to be able to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, so do you see other examples like that would really justify the massive collection of such personal data? I mean, the example that I gave is, you know, like recommendation of similar users and so on. I'm not even sure it makes sense in your context. I'm just asking, you know, like with that kind of technique that I just mentioned and what you know about the kind of application that you've been looking at during your PhD, do you see like valid reasons to collect data, or is it just, I mean, to essentially sustain the economic viability of these applications that oftentimes are for free? And I don't have the answer to that question. I'm just curious about it, you know. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I would say that in terms of relatedness and how we can expand or exploit relatedness features, then definitely you need the info of others to be in one place, as you're saying. But maybe what we can consider here is that maybe we don't need everything that we collect or everything that we can possibly collect, but just only the data that we need in order to provide the relatedness support feature. But again, I would go back to, yeah, we can have that data, or yeah, there's a reason to have that data to provide better user experience and better, let's say, behavior change techniques or more effective behavior change techniques. Yes, we need the data to do that. But again, we should always let people know that we're doing that and which data we're actually using. And then always do this thinking, let's just keep the data that we need and not just as much data as we can, because we have power to do that.
Yeah, this is a good practice. I mean, that we usually call that data minimization. But again, there's also always this question, okay, I need this data to, as you said, improve the user experience. But do I need this data on the server, or is it enough to have it on the phone? You know, like sometimes having the data on the phone is enough to personalize the user experience without having it, you know, leave the phone and go to some servers somewhere. But anyway, that's it.
That's a very interesting question to further discussion.
So going back to Matt's question, if please, if at some point you talk to Mark or people developing this kind of applications, please tell them about data minimization and really asking themselves what they really need to help the user and not what they really need to make money, I would say. Okay. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for your answers. And again, as other committee members said, it was a very nice presentation. So thank you very much for that. I'm done, Rafael.
Thank you, Kévin. So these conversations are really at the forefront of the ethical and data challenges. It's great, Gabriela, how you motivate your committee to really ask these questions. So last but no means least is Mauro, thesis director. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rafael. Gabriela, I have just one question. I would like to step back for a second from physical activity tracking and you know, just get your thoughts on how perhaps we can generalize a little bit the findings of your thesis to a different field. So let's pick another field that is very dear and core to me. You know, PhD students, for instance. PhD students in their life as a PhD student, they lose motivation. How can we keep their motivation levels up throughout the PhD by you know, taking some of the findings of your work?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mauro. To me, and this is something I even experimented during my PhD years, is the fact of having autonomy and be able to make my own decisions and select how to run studies and which path to explore and which one to not to explore. So one thing that definitely I think would help in this other field of PhD students is to have very autonomous supportive activities. So this means trying not to be or have control activities in what the field allows, because of course we are in a process that we're learning and we need guidance, but having this nice mix between the guidance and feeling like we are in control of our research, that to me is very, very powerful. And this aligns with the quote that I presented at the beginning, which is that we need to follow ourselves and feel like this project is ours, like it's our project, our thing. Because whenever we feel like we're doing something for others, then it just doesn't feel like very much I mean, we don't feel motivated at all. And to me, that's super powerful to move forward with how we can apply SDT to PhD students and so on.
Thank you, Gabriela. So yeah, I mean, I feel like you know, having supervised this work for, you know, several years. I mean, I asked you tons of questions all along, so I think I mean, I feel like I'm pretty satisfied, you know, with you know, the answers that you provided all along the work and today as well, and very pleased with the quality of the presentation and the work in general as well. So thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Rafael.
Thank you.
Okay, so Gabriela, you did well. This was really interesting to listen to you converse with your thesis committee. So this closes the scrutiny of your work. I would like to ask now the thesis committee to join us in a breakout room. Mauro is going to set up the breakout room, and in that room we will discuss a few things. Those of you who are in the public, stay with Gabriela, chat with her, and we'll be back in about around 6 minutes. All right. So it does take a few moments to do justice to 5 years of work. So we discussed a lot, but only positive things. And we're back, everyone, in the thesis committee. So it's my pleasure that we have reached a unanimous decision. And the decision is, I'm going to read it in French and then I'll translate it to English. So the decision is the following. Après délibération, le jury a décidé de proposer au rectorat de l'Université de Lausanne de vous décerner le doctorat S Sciences en système d'information, PhD in Information Systems. Nous ferons donc rapport en ces termes au rectorat. We'll inform the rector that Gabriela has earned the title of a PhD in Information Systems. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think everybody in the committee wanted to congratulate you, and then I think Mauro had a few words that he wanted to share with everybody present. So yeah, so or maybe I think Kévin we wanted to go first with you and then to Mauro because you need to leave in a few minutes. Is that correct, Kévin?
Yes, thank you very much, Rafael. So, I mean, I just wanted to congratulate you, Gabriela, for the work. I mean, it was really, I mean, it's what you achieved is impressive. It was really pleasant to be on your thesis committee and have those discussions around the different topics. It was probably more pleasant for me than for you during the private defense to have this conversation. But still, I wanted to let you know that it was very, very interesting. And again, I mean, congratulations on the good work and all the best for the next steps.
Merci, Kévin.
And Max?
Yeah, congratulations, like to work really well done. Like I'm looking forward to your path, like into the world of research and what's ahead of you. So congratulations, well done.
Thanks, Max.
Rita?
Congratulations, Gabriela. It's interesting and nice to see the evolution that have happened and how it eventually ended. I'm really super proud and happy for you. I know that big things lie ahead. Keep it up. Congratulations.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you very much.
And Mauro?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words. I'm super happy, and at the same time, there's a drop of sadness in reaching this stage because we are at the end of a very long journey. It was a pleasure to work with you, Gabriela. You were the first PhD student in the team. The team has grown a lot. With you there, you were a big part of the lab that we started together, and lots of things that actually are in place now and they are very useful. You were one of the key stakeholders in setting these things up, and so I'm very, very happy that we did this together. I'm happy for you. I mean, I've seen you grow enormously during your career as a PhD student. When you started, I mean, you were a bit lost like everybody, and then slowly but steadily, started growing confidence and independence. And, more recently, you started publishing without me, which is a good sign because, it means that you no longer need a supervisor and you are a grown up in the researcher world. And so I really hope to see more of your publications as an independent researcher in the near future. And I really hope that you will not be a stranger to our lab, to UNIL. Please do come back and keep in touch and keep sharing with us, and we'll see whether what opportunities lie ahead. But I'm sure that your path is going to be bright. So thanks so much, and congratulations for your next steps.
Thank you, Mauro. Thank you very much. And thanks, everybody. Now it's time to celebrate finally.
Yes, where's the champagne?
Exactly. The sad thing about doing this over Skype, over Zoom, is that there is no physical celebrations. I mean, but we actually did it in advance a couple of times. Yeah. So yeah, we didn't want to stay behind in terms of celebrations, but I'm pretty sure that you are going to have a big one in Costa Rica as well. And next time you will be around, we'll do another one, because why not?
Why not?
We can always do another one. I mean, and so yes, thank you everybody, and thanks to all the attendees that stayed in this call. And back to you, Rafael, for the final word.
No, I think that's the end of the official part of the ceremony. Those who would like to stay and can, they're more than welcome to, and to talk with Gabriela some more. I think Kévin, also we need to leave now, and yeah, so congratulations, Gabriela, once more, and goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, everybody.